Hey, Karmen, you and I have had many conversations since you became student body president.
Yeah.
It's been 5 months since the murder of George Floyd and historic outpouring of protest and concern about that. Talk to me a little bit about how you're feeling today, about where we are with race.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for allowing us to have and continue these conversations. I would say this year in Knoxville is a little bit different. You know, we address it as the two pandemics that are going on, COVID-19, but also racism has always been, you know, the other pandemic in the room. But at this moment, you know, I'm just excited to see the continuation of all the work that students are doing. We've seen action happen on our campus in such a positive way, and I'm just so glad to be involved this year.
Well, I'm grateful that you're our student body president.
Thank you.
You know, talk a little bit about from a student's perception. How do you see the campus's response so far? How are students doing? Kind of, how do you see that?
Yeah, well, you know, this year is a little bit different because everything is pretty much on the line in 2020. We're dealing with an election as well. So I feel that tensions are slowly but surely rising as well. But, you know, I think students are starting to realize that all of these different identities and all of these different concerns are intersected at some point.
Right.
And, you know, I think there's definitely a lot of concern in regards to, I think, you know, the Black community here, the brown community here. We've been concerned for a minute, but in terms of making safe spaces and finding those safe spaces, we have staff and faculty here that have really, you know, had that purpose and, you know, pushed for us having those safe spaces around campus. But it's just so important that we continue dialogue about, you know, this vol is a verb, mattering and belonging umbrella of conversation.
Our Dean of Students office had a wonderful campaign going on around vol is a verb, and we talked about we want to be a place where everyone matters and everyone belongs.
Right.
If we were really doing that 100%, what are 2 or 3 things that you would see happening here that aren't happening right now?
Well, the first thing is that we would work more on, you know, of course we talked about recruitment. We would see more students of color come in once they truly feel like this is the place where they matter and belong on our campus. The second thing is, you know, we've had conversations about what that looks like in terms of policy reform and, you know, making sure that we cultivate that environment where our scholars that are Black and brown can be their best. But yeah, I think in terms of, we have a lot of different things that we could work on in terms of policy as well as recruitment and, you know, and also with faculty and staff. You know, representation just has to be in every pocket in every sector of our university.
Well, you know, one thing I love about that phrase, everyone matters, everyone belongs. It's impossible for me to imagine anyone being against that.
Yeah.
We all, as human beings, want to belong and want to matter, and we need to feel that. So let's talk a little bit about dialogue. This summer, my cabinet, all of the deans, I call it the University Leadership Council, there were staff, faculty representatives, you were there representing the student body. We spent the better part of 2 days thinking through issues around racism. We had all read the book, How to Become an Anti-Racist. And then you participated in that retreat and heard people sharing and talking. What was that like for you as a student?
Well, you know, that was such a great introduction to the SGA president's job. I think I went into it having my misconceptions on what, you know, our university would do. But I'll tell you, it was a moment where there was so much transparency on what the real issues were. And I think, you know, for your cabinet and for your leadership to take 2 days to invite us into that space and to have a facilitated conversation by professionals on diversity was really important. And people were really transparent in that moment on, this is my privilege, this is the way that I've grown up, and here's how I can change. So I think we're doing a good job in terms of growth as a university leadership. We had to have some hard conversations about what was your first moment when you realized that race was an issue, and what does privilege look like for you? So I wanted to ask you, what did you realize, I think, from that summit? And, you know, what were those moments where you realized that race was an issue or that you had privilege? You know,
I think I mean, at my age, I've finally really come to realize how much it is a privilege to be born white and just never think about certain things.
Yeah.
And I think that those conversations we had this summer, everybody kind of sharing that, it was a aha moment for me in a lot of ways, and that how how many things we take for granted. Some of the practices we need to work on at the university. So, for example, when we hire faculty of color and then ask them to be the diversity representative on every committee on campus, that's not helping them.
Right.
And then they come up for tenure and promotion and their record's lacking in another area because we've overused them.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of honest conversations, and we have to change that.
Yeah.
And it happens at the unit level. I mean, in their departments. So just being able to start pinpointing specific practices that advantage one group over another and stop doing those.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about. And I don't see people feeling threatened by those conversations. I see a great willingness to look at those and say, yeah, you know what, that's not right, and we don't have to do that, and we need to change that.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful, but I'm always a glasses half full kind of person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess, to the person, Chancellor Plowman, that says, I can't get with this diversity focus, why do we need to have this? What do you say back to that volunteer that says, I don't see a need for us to do all this work on becoming an anti-racist institution?
What I say back is, I've always viewed diversity as a strength. The more different perspectives, the more different backgrounds, the more different ways of experiencing the world, the better we're going to be. And I'm committed to building that here. And it shouldn't be a threatening thing. And that what I often say is, I go back to that phrase, I can't believe you don't want this place to be somewhere where everyone matters and everyone belongs. We want the young person from rural Tennessee to feel like they matter. They come here sometimes alone, don't know anybody, scared. We want them to feel like they belong. We want the person from downtown Memphis. We want the person who is lonely and isolated in another part of the university to feel like there is a place for me. Our job is to help students learn and thrive and feel they're in a safe environment to do that. So I get letters. I've had some kind of ugly letters, but mostly I've had an outpouring of honestly real support. And I think we have a supportive president, a supportive board, so I feel we're at a good place right now as a university. And then I think we really have to keep pushing on how do we be a culture, a climate where people are respectful and accepting of one another.